Today's lecture is going to be over topic 8.6, fascism in Italy. This is going to be really important for you to be able to understand what fascism is and then apply it to Germany. But we're going to focus mostly on Italy, the totalitarian that arises there, and how it would eventually lead to the Italians being involved in World War II. So today, what you should be able to identify by the end of this lecture is who Mussolini is and how he was a totalitarian, then most importantly, what is fascism and its effects on Europe. So the vocab, very simple today. The black shirts, these are Mussolini's Italian fascists. They're just going to be members of the fascist party. They're mostly going to be young men. And you can think of them as like a bunch of thugs, essentially, for the fascist party. They will go around and beat up anybody who disagrees with them. The March on Rome, this is just when all those black shirts and the fascists march on Rome in Italy to try and get Mussolini, their leader, control of Italy. Totalitarian state, we've gone over what a totalitarian is, but a totalitarian state is a government run by a totalitarian. Remember, state means government. It's just another word for it. So you have to understand what a totalitarian is to understand that this is going to be a government that controls pretty much all aspects of their citizens' lives. Lastly, and most importantly, we have fascism. Fascism is kind of the big thing we're introducing with this unit. This is a government system that is very centralized. It's very dictatorial. And the key thing about it, it is not communist. Fascists and communists hate each other. They will usually end up fighting a war. And we'll go over what the aspects are of fascism a little later. So, true or false, Hitler developed fascism. This is false. Fascism is actually going to be developed mostly in Italy by Benito Mussolini. So post-World War I, Italy had a lot of issues. First and foremost, it was angry because it had been promised that territory in World War I on its borders with Austria and around the Aegean Sea, and it was not given that territory. It was never given what was owed to it. So this made a lot of Italian nationalists mad. Secondly, the Italian socialists, we can just call them the communists, they began to cause a lot of problems. They rioted, seized land. They wanted to turn Italy into a communist nation. And lastly, unemployment and taxes rose. This is simply the Great Depression. If you want to replace that right there with the Great Depression, that's going to be one of the major things that hits Italy. The Great Depression almost begins earlier in Italy. They had issues all throughout the 20s. They never experienced the roaring 20s. So it was generally just you couldn't find a job all throughout the 20s and 30s. Enter Benito Mussolini. So this guy over here is Benito Mussolini. He is a World War I veteran, a very decorated World War I veteran. He is a journalist, and he is an extreme Italian nationalist. He wants to rebuild the glory of ancient Rome and make Italy one of the most powerful powers in Europe. He's an extremely charismatic speaker. He gives really good speeches that kind of whip the people up into a frenzy. And he is going to be the one who forms the fascist party and really begins transforming Italy into the fascist dictatorship that it becomes. So if you look here, all right, the key to Mussolini's fascism is extreme nationalism. You are an Italian, you're loyal to Italy, nothing else matters other than being loyal to Italy itself. So Mussolini slowly begins to take power throughout the country. One of the ways that he does this is using his followers, the black shirts. They use violence to gain control. Now, a lot of people did support the Italian fascists. Don't think that it was like a revolution where only a few people took over the government. A lot of people turned to them because it seemed like the current Italian government wasn't working. But the black shirts, if you were a political opponent and you were having a rally in a city, the black shirts would show up and they would break up your rally by beating up everybody there. And they would send a message that you aren't welcome in this area. The fascists are in control of it. So eventually the fascist party begins to grow enough all throughout Italy that right here in this picture in the top right, Mussolini and his followers decide to lead a march on Rome, the capital of Italy. And they rally in Naples, and the fascists say, we're going to go to Rome, and they're going to demand changes of the government. The king, who still ruled Italy at this time, was afraid that Mussolini was going to start a civil war, so he legally asks Mussolini to run the country. That's what it means by form a government. So on October 30th, Mussolini is in Rome, and he is legally appointed to lead the country. One thing that I want you to kind of make note of during this unit is that these leaders were given power by the government. They were elected. They didn't take over, they were chosen. And that's because a lot of the Great Depression and the bad economic times in these countries, people were scared, so they gave power to leaders that said they would fix things. So Mussolini goes on to take the title of Il Duce, or the leader in Italy. You can see him down here with the Pope. He actually threatens the Pope to kind of allow him to lead Italy, and he becomes the totalitarian in the area. So this is how fascism kind of works. So fascism is where you take the government and the economy and you kind of put them together and you can't separate them. So in fascism, the economy is under state control, but it is still a capitalist system. So the government can tell corporations, we need you to produce tanks, we need you to produce guns, we need you to produce gloves, but those corporations are still owned by individual people. Business owners and the fascists then work together to run the country. So fascism is about combining business and government together. The workers in fascism, even though in this poster over here, this is supposed to be the proud Italian worker, making the country strong, workers are forbidden to strike. They don't have a lot of wages because you are supposed to go to work for the country, and you're supposed to work as hard as you can at all times. Some aspects of fascism, the number one, and this you will be asked on a test, is loyalty to the state. And remember, state means government. You have to be loyal to the government. So the whole idea is the state comes before the individual. The needs of the country are more important than yours. So men are supposed to grow up to be soldiers and workers. Women are supposed to what's called win the battle of motherhood. They're supposed to have as many children for the fascist nation as possible. And both of these things kind of combine into the idea that you're not serving yourself, you're serving the nation. Children are obviously going to be shaped to be good fascists, so the schools are heavily influenced by propaganda. In Italy specifically, they're taught about how powerful and good Rome was, how they can make Italy strong, and instantly children are brought into these youth groups where the goal is to teach them discipline, military discipline skills they're going to need for life. So you can see here, youth groups are very important. If you notice the boys are already training with rifles. They're in mock uniforms. It's kind of getting them ready to join the military. Fascists are very expansionary. They know they're going to fight wars, so they're getting the country ready for it. Girls' youth groups were focused on learning skills for home and motherhood and being prepared for having children. So fascism, these are the features of fascism right here. Fascism is a centralized government, and it can't be communist. Fascists and communists do not get along. They do not like each other. They will never agree. The state, again, the government is more important than the individual. So the state takes precedent over the individual. Fascism is very destructive to human rights. There is no such thing as human rights. If they want to take away your business, if they want to put you in prison, fascists are going to do it because they are pretty much in charge. It's all based on violence and power. The features, extreme nationalism is number one. A fascist will always be very, very, very nationalist toward their country, whether it's Germany, Italy, whatever. They're very loyal to their government. They have aggressive expansionism. Fascists want to expand their country. They want to take over land and areas. So that's why they focus on the military. As such, they glorify warfare. They want their country. They think war makes a country strong. They want their nation to go to war. And fascists hate democracy. They say that democracy puts the individual above the nation. So democracy kind of destroys your nationalism in your country. So think of fascism as a different way to look at government as opposed to a communist way or a democratic way. It is more of a combo of the two, but again, it's very violent and very, very destructive to human rights. So you can see here, these are just posters that show the aspects of fascism. We got the military over here, right? Extreme militarism, loyalty. She's kissing the Italian flag and then expanding over here. This is supposed to be a modern Italian soldier showing Rome, and these are the areas in Africa that Italy wants to conquer. So the appeal of fascism. Fascism is stable as long as you have a strong leader. And during the 1920s and 30s, a lot of these countries, they were falling apart. So they looked to a strong leader to get them out of those issues. You can see from these pictures right here, the German people and the Italian people, they love Mussolini. They love Hitler because they saw them as solving their problems. Also, both of these countries had been defeated during World War I. Or not defeated. Italy had kind of gotten none of the things that they wanted, and it seemed like they were beaten. But nationalism is big. Germany had been beaten. Italy's economy collapsed because of World War I. So nationalism, they revived their people's belief in their country. And then last and most importantly is the Great Depression. The Great Depression is what brings fascism out. People are scared, they're hungry, they're poor. So fascism provided the ability to fix their nation, and these leaders were ones who said that they could do that. So if you have any questions, let me know. Fascism is going to be very important. We're going to go over it when we talk about Adolf Hitler, but I hope that made sense.